Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Connecting the Dots. Joining me on this one is Sebastian Dzuibek, a Fractional SEO Director, and he's here to talk about the wide-ranging impact of AI on SEO. Sebastian, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Neil. Hi, everyone.
It's great to have you on, man. So can you start by giving the viewers some background on you and how you got into SEO and then obviously how you became a self-employed SEO consultant?
Yeah, sure. So effectively, I've joined the SEO crowd in 2016 when I became SEO exec for an international agency called WebCertain. And that's kind of where I learned all the ropes, started working with my first client and got into more of the technical side of things. And then within that role, I've quickly progressed to become a team leader and then managed a team of 3 execs under head of SEO. So yeah, it's been really good and a start for my career. And from there, I've become head of technical SEO at Search Labs and then pushed through different agencies, and it's been really good experience to see many agencies, how they operate, work with some amazing people in the industry, and learn kind of wider digital, what does that mean, and really help me out, shape me as a professional today. So yeah, and now I'm self-employed. Really first steps. I'm in my second month, but it's been going really well with new client wins. So yeah, that's been amazing as well. So hopefully positions me well to open up the discussion today. Yeah.
You've had a great and varied career. I mean, obviously, I did some research on you before we even started talking, never mind do this podcast. And I was like so impressed by some of the agencies you'd worked for, some really big names like Manchester agencies. You've worked in Leeds as well, obviously. And yeah, I mean, risen up through the levels really quickly. And obviously now doing your own thing. I mean, before I get onto the other questions, I am actually curious as to how you've hit the ground running so fast, because obviously, as you've said there, you've been freelance for a couple of months, but you've got a fully booked diary. Is that right? I mean, you seem to be killing it.
I've been fully booked for June, and then it is tailing off a little bit in July, but it's kind of probably 50-60% of my time is taken, where it kind of keeps it balanced, and I can think about what's next. I think the secret is 8 years in agency land, and really it is a small world. So if for anyone thinking of going freelance that has a similar path, I'd say don't burn any bridges, because like it's so important that and not that I would, but it's just kind of one of those things where you never know who you're gonna come across in the future. So yeah, that's the secret. So no secret, just a lot of hard work, and just yeah, it happened.
I did a little wry smile there, because I probably should have followed your advice about not burning bridges. But I did that a few years ago, and
that advice is key, but not easy to follow in all cases. Especially like for me, I am quite strong-minded at times, and that probably helps me being a really good consultant and really taking care of the client's priority, but also puts me in trouble sometimes as well. So it's not perfect, but I think if you can stick to it for 80-90% of the time, then you'll be absolutely fine. And again, a lot of people do appreciate that strong point of view, because then that gives them reassurance that what you're doing, you've got the expertise, you've got the hopefully cloud within the organization to do certain things. So yeah, that's all helpful.
I think with what you and I do, obviously you're in a different industry to me. I'm content and you're SEO, but it's not so black and white. A lot of the time there's a lot of gray, there's a lot of nuance. And I think that someone who's strong-minded enough to make a split-second decision or a quick-fire decision on something that is quite subjective is really important. So I think you have all the characteristics of a great SEO consultant. And we're going to come on to talk about some of those gray areas a bit later on. So what are some of the most impactful changes and developments that you've noticed in SEO during your time in the industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because there's been a lot of highs in the industry with what I like to call a kind of shiny object syndrome, because there's that phase, in our industry where there's always something new around the corner. Google is cooking up a lot of algorithm updates and new features, and it's kind of one of the first ones. I remember when featured snippets became a thing, and that was kind of in my early exec times, where we were trying to figure out how to rank for them. So that kind of that seemed like what zero results pages in Google is gonna just tell all the answers, and you kind of see the pattern there with things like voice search that came out around, and I've been sitting in boardrooms with marketing teams and going, what, the voice search is the next thing, and they don't quite materialize like that every time, but there are some big themes for sure, like JavaScript SEO for sure became massive, absolutely critical even to this day. Like with the clients I have right now, it's such a prominent challenge, because essentially it removes the ability for Google to understand any content on your site if it's done in the least optimal way. And then so that's huge, because that content accessibility is how you get your foot in the door, is so key. So these are some of the biggest ones that I think are I can mention for sure.
Yeah, I remember finding out about Google rich snippets and it blowing my mind. Like, I remember I made my foray into content marketing kind of around the time you made your foray into SEO, I think, actually, because I moved into content marketing in around 2017. And I just remember finding out about so many different aspects of SEO writing, especially. And it made me a much better writer, I must admit, because I was in journalism and PR prior to that. And let's just say there's a lot of impractical writing that goes on. When you talked before about writing in a digestible way that Google will love, that your users will love. Now, my ethos always is users first, search engines second. But I feel like if you write for users first, then the byproduct is you're going to be rewarded by the search engines. I take quite a simple approach, really. I don't change too much of how I write. Obviously, there'll be certain things, but I always think if you write in a clear, compelling way, generally you don't need to overthink it too much, even in spite of all these helpful content updates that come out, and they do scare people quite a lot. I mean, yeah, there's a lot we can talk about. Obviously, there was a Moz report I sent to you actually about some of the things they look for, and obviously knowledge graphs are coming more to the fore now, image packs. But again, I always say to people, if it lends itself to the subject, do it. If it doesn't, don't do it. Don't just weave in a knowledge graph because a Moz report said that you should do. But yeah, I mean, you probably see a lot of that come and go in SEO. Like, people really panic about one thing and then they realize, okay, it's not that big a deal. Let's not overthink it.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to like knowledge graphs and different features, I think what's one thing that's probably true is Google is more and more interested in deep expertise, and that's why they're trying to bring in the businesses that are authoritative in the space. That's why knowledge graphs might start popping up, but also kind of offers and boosting people internally, that on the individual personal brand level is so key, because like I'm finding a lot of advice. We were chatting about the AI article yesterday, and I was reading halfway through it. It's like, oh, that sounds exactly like ChatGPT. You just spin it out, and that's where I'm like, who wrote the article? Is it a prominent person? I didn't really come across them before, so my trust went drastically down from there. So again, it's kind of that that it might not go fully into personalities and personal brands and expertise, but there's certainly a third of the factors that has to relate to building that out, because otherwise content is spaceless, and it's easier and easier to spin thousands of words, which we are getting into. We are spilling the teasers for the conversation today, but a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of the bit where it has to come right through.
It's such a great example, because the E on the EEAT, obviously Google has added to it in the last couple of years with the so it's experience, expertise, authority, trust. So now the experience But how can you have that experience if it's from a robot? You know, it's like, so if you're going to have all four of those things, you need a human being, you need a subject matter expert, as you said. You can't get AI to replicate. Well, maybe you could over time, don't get me wrong, but like certainly from the get-go, when you're creating content, you wouldn't go in and say, right, Sebastian's an expert on SEO, come up with what you think he's going to say, because they can't possibly know about you. Like, you'd have to feed. The thing is, you could get AI to do this, but the amount of time and effort you'd have to expend in prompting it to replicate you would be, you know, exponential. Like, you just kind of feel like, well, what's the point in that? You might as well just get a fucking human to do it. Like, I think we do forget this. For all that AI has its uses, replicating experience surely can't be one of them. I mean, unless I'm wrong, I don't know. But
I think there's a lot of interesting innovation in that space, and it's constantly moving. And I think we're in so early stages, we don't quite know how quickly it will move, because, you know, tomorrow something might happen and there's ChatGPT 10 released and it's all over. But in the current world, I think sticking with what consumer wants or is really key. Really getting under the skin, searching that. Like I had a chat today about, you know, content and trying to create pages, and they were just doing too many jobs. We were trying to squeeze in like 3 different intents into the page. And just one of those things where you can see, like, just by simple things like Googling the keyword and Googling the other one to go, you know what, if we're trying to rank for this is the type of content we need to have, and this is more informational, it needs to be more of a structure of a blog post or whatever that might be. Versus if it's a commercial term, this is the types of things that people expect. And Google is not, you know, magician. They just analyze a lot of data. They might even be using user signals, and that's kind of where, you know, they're getting that feedback loop of, this is what people want and this is what we want to provide, and you can't cheat that, and unfortunately.
No. Listen, there's still a lot to be said for Googling a keyword. Like, you know, people frown upon that as if, you know, don't go on page 1 and copy what's on page 1. And by the way, don't go on page 1 and copy what's on page 1. But by all means, use it as a baseline. Like, people seem to like, I would sooner do that than use AI any day of the week. And the other thing to say on what you've just said there is, imagine if ChatGPT 10 comes out and they can replicate our appearance, and those guys have got better beards than us. I mean, do you think that could be a realistic possibility? I feel like, your beard is pretty pristine. You know, it's pretty well groomed.
I'd love a better beard, but you know, I think in general, I'm following the trends from NVIDIA, who is kind of the biggest shovel seller, that they produce the graphics cards that then power the AI revolution, you could say. And effectively, they are openly talking about, you know, digital twin, and how that, you know, you will have a digital avatar that's pretty much like you, and you know, if neural link becomes mass market, then that's kind of where it can really become you. But we're not quite there yet, where we're in you know, in the initial rollout of those things, which is still quite exciting. Again, like we were chatting about different tools and what they can do. Screamfrog has released ChatGPT integration, where suddenly you don't have to give them the chat window all the context. It just gets the context for crawling the website. So that's kind of, you know, powering things like creating alt text for images, where previously it would be really tedious task, because you can have thousands of images on the site. So yes, there is, you know, that benefit of scale and automation, and looking at things in not one at a time, but many things at a time. So yeah, there's definitely benefit of AI and automation through that, but it does have, you know, the disadvantages as well, because if you're looking at everything, then are you really focused on something? So back to that you know, really stepping into customer shoes, they don't look at the web from thousands of, they just want to solve a problem, and you to address that, you really need to get good at solving that individual problem and creating the journey that addresses that. So again, understanding the customer, understanding the market is really the first step to everything. And then, and that's not very scalable either, at least for now. So if you can get good at that, then everything else nearly becomes a form of automation and data processing. So yeah,
I think just going back to what you said there, I think anyone who spent time adding alt text to images could appreciate AI doing it for them. I think I would enjoy that prospect, because we all know how tedious it can be. I mean, well, okay, so let's dive into the main topic. I mean, we've already kind of segued into it anyway. Let's just expand a little bit on what you've just said there. So the main topic we're obviously here to discuss is how AI is impacting SEO. So let's go through the complete list of pros and cons of using AI for, SEO, content strategy, and content creation. So, I mean, what are the pros and cons in your opinion? So if we start with let's start with the cons, actually. I was going to say, let's start with the pros, but let's start with the cons and then work our way into the pros. So what are the cons for you?
Sounds like a plan. I guess the biggest con is really the approach, and I think especially Google has been very vague about the use of AI content. At some point, they were maybe too open-minded. They didn't maybe expect what's going to happen, and they said, "Oh, AI content is fine," and then that created the wave of a lot of teams getting shrunk because companies basically thought and that AI content is the next new thing, and you can just create a website with million pages of AI-based content and just take everything by storm. And many people have done the same thing at the same time, and Google just went, "No, you're not doing that." So I think that's kind of the biggest con in there, because you can actually create that, but is it valuable content? Is it meeting user needs, and is it helping or is it not helping? So then we've had a helpful content update, and I know there's a lot of controversy in the industry, Reddit taking a lot of Reddit and forums and Stack Overflow. That kind of comes from the understanding that those forums get the customers with real problems, and they're looking for solutions. Then there are experts in those, hopefully, that try to address them. So it's kind of like pure social proof. People like me have got this kind of problem. They went away and solved it. So that's why, in my view, they rank really well. But then coming back to kind of programmatic SEO and the scale of that, it's so easy just to create offshoots of thousands and thousands of pages with very little value. And like, I wouldn't be surprised that like the site owners know it's low volume content. It's purely to cheat and get the traffic, get the rankings. And yeah, I'd be super surprised if they weren't aware that it's more of a cheating system tactic. But yeah, that's kind of the biggest challenge of it. And again, probably something worth mentioning. We kind of there's a lot of data going. With AI overviews as an example, that's kind of AI content rollout that Google's creating, right? So they're not maybe following their own rules there, but with Google, the challenge as well is it's kind of right now being said that maybe 10-15% of queries that trigger AI overviews, and it might be that those AI overviews are explaining the process, and we've seen examples that have become kind of the memes of the industry, where somebody's asking how to make cheese stick on the pizza, and the overview goes, "Oh, you just need to add some glue, non-toxic glue, and let it settle," and it's just like, but at the microcosm of that, with billions of queries that Google is serving every single day, if 0.5% is wrong, still might mean like millions of searches that are returning false information. So coming back to the quality of it, I think again it's a snapshot for now, that will hopefully evolve very quickly. But right now, that's probably not good enough to serve so many millions of queries that are incorrect, that become the memes. Because somebody might actually treat it seriously. Like it might be less obvious in some queries that it's absolutely wrong, and it can go very wrong. So I'm not a fan of that rollout and how it's been approached. I'm also not a fan of a lot of scaremongering in the industry, that SEO is bad, we're all gonna lose our jobs and everything else. SEO has been, like we've been chatting and in the opener, that SEO has been constantly evolving and learning and moving with customer, or sometimes maybe trying to move ahead of the customer to know where the path is. And Google has been quite good actually in setting those bigger milestones. Where they fall down perhaps is maybe execution of them and sticking to them. But in general, we know what that good experience needs to look like and what that looks like. So yeah, I think that's probably wraps up the cons for me, because there is many, but hopefully again over time we're gonna see less and less. And then there's moving into pros. I think the opportunity is quite huge. We've mentioned automation. I'm quite blessed because I've had a lot of trust from my teams and from my managers. Because as an example, in Search Labs, where I've been head of tech, we've hired like a junior Python programmer. So they've been able to use data science and data engineering to essentially help us condense those really tedious tasks into sometimes minutes. It took hours to work on, obviously, but then once the processes are established and we've got that person who can turn to things like mapping and optimization and checking things, become more seamless. And we've even taken Screwing Frog to the cloud as well, and to kind of create that to help again with automation, making sure that roles and certain alerts are in place. So essentially, yeah, just AI is very broad for me, where it can help automate, learn, pattern match certain things to all AGI level, where it just takes away our lives and we're just on the beach and drinking margaritas or gin and tonics and whatnot. So we're kind of early phase there. More on the snapshot side of things, I think again with the tools that are coming up, it becomes more easier to have a quick glance, because as you know yourself, working with SEO guys and within SEO quite closely, SEO is absolute nightmare for actually creating the insights. It takes ages. So anything you can do to shortcut it, especially if it's a brand new site, and I've in my time I'm quite used to pitching, and sometimes pitching is like, we're pitching next week, what can you tell me? And in those instances where you don't know the site, you've never published content on it, you don't know the behavior, those are kind of easy shortcuts. And again, I did not rely on those metrics for the campaign, but for the first glance, it's sometimes really helpful. So a good example of that is keyword difficulty, which is absolutely hated, shouldn't be used. But if there is a way to look at it, SEMrush has introduced a recent feature where along keyword clustering, you can add your domain and actually get a bit more tailored personal keyword difficulty score. And that's where it gives you a better view where you belong, can you rank in that tab. And so again, like I know we've been looking at different terms, and how accurate is it really? Like, for sure, I'd take the expert that worked on the site his opinion first. But as I've never had anything to do with that site. That's a probably safe bet that you can go, that's impossible, or actually it's a lot less difficult than I thought. Yeah. So again, those shortcuts then stack up, and at some point will enable you to be more accurate with the work, hopefully taking away the tedious side of things into more strategic thinking. And again, kind of working with a lot of professionals also in content side of things. Sometimes it's so easy just to stick with the work, because there's not really, like, everyone expects deliverables and getting that side of things done, but if you can take away even 10-20% of your workload by automating things, and you can get it back, to take a step back, think more strategically, review the content you've published, see if that's doing what you were hoping to do. Just kind of having that mind space is really key. So that's kind of where I think that some of the bigger pros come in right now, because with that, I think that's really hopefully it leads to the place where we can spend more time thinking about what we need to do rather than just being stuck in the weeds.
I love what you said there about the 10 to 20% time savings, because they could be invaluable further down the line. I think back to a project that I did last year for a client, and I basically, so my areas when it comes to SEO are basically on-page SEO, keyword research, on-page SEO. They're my two main. I can do SEO audits as well, but not to the same standards as you can, I would imagine. But I basically came up with a series of meta titles and descriptions for a client, and AI helped me do that. Now, I didn't use it word for word how AI did it, but I mean, I was able to put a prompt in about who the client was, came back with a series of meta titles and descriptions. That saved me some time in having to do it from scratch. So there's one example. The SEMrush example that you used is perfect, because I've already started using that. So the AI-powered personal keyword difficulty score. I mean, I think, like with everything, there's probably a caveat, and you'd probably say this as well. There's like, you've got to take everything with a pinch of salt. So if SEMrush says to you, you have a 60% chance of not ranking on page 1 for this based on our personalized data, then I think you kind of look at it and go, well, that's not necessarily true, because we already rank for a similar keyword on page 1. But it gives you a good idea.
Experience comes in, 100%. And to my teams, I'd always say, like, never trust those, because you have first-hand experience of working, and you've published, over 100 pages, so you know exactly where something will land. Versus that's kind of that caveat there. And I'd say definitely in terms of kind of where cons become pros and where pros become cons, it's really key that you put the right process and the right approach to creation of AI content. So, like you said perfectly, not using it verbatim, but reviewing, editing, making sure it sounds right. It's so easy for AI content right now to not sound like a human being and add on very flowery language where it just, there's no need for it, or maybe even the audience is wrong for it. So again, being that expert, writing and understanding brand tone of voice and what the audience response to is really quite key, which I appreciate on your side, because I'd never be able to, like, I'm using ChatGPT as a crutch sometimes, because I'd never be able to write in English to the standard that you would. Now I think again, there's a lot of innovation. Just the other day I've seen in ChatGPT you can create like mini GPTs that have special jobs, and I think that's kind of where it starts getting interesting. The one I've spotted the other day was actually one for content creators that wants to kind of make AI ChatGPT content more human. So it is really kind of, again, I've not tested that, but that's something like that content and those GPTs and at the time where and if you're a coding whiz, you can do that already with some models where you can create those mini GPTs, mini models, and you will have like a developer one, an SEO one, a content one, a design one, and you can make them all argue and do different jobs. That's kind of interesting one, I think, because you can nearly program and script different level of behaviors and standards and final output of that. It would be like prompt engineering taking prompt engineering to the next level, right? So that's kind of where I think AI starts becoming more useful, and you don't have to handhold it every single step, because that's kind of what happens right now. When you write the first prompt, it's absolutely rubbish, and then you need to get some clarity, or maybe what you have to do. I actually spoken with a great guy as well that guided me through prompt engineering a bit more, and you can actually make ChatGPT rewrite your prompts to make it easier and better. But also what you do is to make it stop hallucinating. You can just tell it to not make things up and ask follow-up questions, and just be your guide rather than taking over entirely. And that's where kind of those ideas of Microsoft and Copilot. It's not your pilot. Don't treat it as one, because you're gonna crash. It is a helper for now, at least, that will help you, fast track some of those things, probably make your research easier. But again, taking some of those guidelines in place will make sure that you're away from mass market copy that anyone can produce that's not very accurate, into something that's good, that you enjoy actually creating, and somebody at the other end of that enjoys reading and is helping them.
I think the scary thing about AI, not just in respect of SEO but content creation, is that every time you speak to somebody about it, you learn something new, or they've done something that you haven't got much experience in. So when you talked about the mini GPTs, that's not even something I've considered yet. I'm aware of it, but I wouldn't know how to do it. I mean, I've got ChatGPT 4.0, but yeah, I will definitely be looking at that. And just to tie in as well with what you said about the statistical information that ChatGPT gives you, I'll give you a classic example of that. So I was writing an article for basically the catering equipment industry, commercial catering equipment industry. And I needed some stats on sustainability. So for instance, how many commercial catering equipment manufacturers are embracing sustainability, and what is the bottom line result of that? And it gave me a load of information, and it attributed the statistics to an industry publication called the Food Service Equipment Journal. And at first I thought, wow, that's a perfect stat. And that ties in exactly with what I'm trying to write about. What a great introduction. I then went back and said, please provide an original source for your statistic and link me to the article. And it said, unfortunately, I could not find a source, as it appears this. It was basically words to the effect of, as it appears this statistic is inaccurate. And I was like, why are you giving me an inaccurate stat? What the hell is going on? Like, so basically they didn't have a source for it. I Googled it, couldn't find it anywhere. Now, a lot of writers would have just taken that and gone, well, if they've quoted the Food Service Equipment Journal and it's from 2023, it's timely, it's relevant, it's from a great publication. Let's go for it. Whereas I was like, no, I want you to tell me what that was. Now, a lot of writers would have just, as I said, would have just gone, okay, great, I'll put that in. In fact, I'm going to ask a question off the back of this. Now, I apologize because this wasn't a question that I briefed you on, but based on what I've just said there and what you've said throughout this podcast, what are some of the biggest qualities and characteristics that people need in order to make sure that they're utilizing AI to its full capability in respect of SEO?
No, that's a good one. I think in terms of characteristics, for an SEO, for sure, and I think it's true wider, there's that curiosity, like you're interested in what it can do. But on the other side of things, it's actually responsibility, I think, because you want to produce and be proud of the work that you do. And I think also kind of working in an agency, you get clients where nearly anything will go, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but it's more like their roles are a bit less relaxed. Yes, they care about the quality of the work, but they're not interested into how you get there. But in terms of other spectrum, there are clients already that are requesting sources and information, and data points have to be all backed up by evidence of that you've done your due diligence. And I imagine in the copywriting world, it's already happening where AI content is checked by third-party tools, and you might get removed from the writer's roster if you get found out. Again, those steps of using sources and information and statistics being backed up is probably another layer where you kind of have to go, you know what, like I can't just go to ChatGPT and ask for a random article. It has to be fully researched. So but it doesn't stop you of asking ChatGPT what are the top 20 articles that you recommend for reading about this, and just shortcutting yours, and what are the key concepts. That's kind of where I think nearly it helps more strategically to learn a new industry. And as I work in digital agencies, we've not really had a lot of specialization into a single industry. That's where it's been an amazing experience, because I got to learn from every brand, from fashion and into construction and financial services, and professional insurance, like the whole spectrum. But that means you have to get really good at researching and understanding those industries, speaking with those business owners and marketing people. But also, if ChatGPT can give you the hints into these are the core concepts, this is the language that those industries are using, it nearly becomes a bit easier to walk into something quite technical, which we've never had before.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, it comes back to curiosity, learning, and asking the right questions. That comes with experience as well. And I must say that even if you have that baseline of I want to know more, learn more, and I just want to do the best work I can, you're never gonna go wrong with that.
No, I mean, it seems quite simple advice. What I'm going to say now is basically what you've just said as well, but it always amazes me how few people appear to follow it when I see AI generated content, or maybe that article that we read last night. But just don't take things at face value. Don't ever put one prompt in and use what that one prompt, and then use the response that you get. You need to put in a series of prompts and make it into a bigger conversation, like you talk to a human being. I mean, you wouldn't just say to a human being, Sebastian, please write 1,000 words on this, or please come up with these meta descriptions, or please come up with this. And then whatever you give me based on that really vague prompt, I just go, yep, good to go. Like if I worked with a client who was like that, I'd be worried, never mind a robot.
Yeah.
So
it's just one of those things where if I can do the same thing, and just go to ChatGPT, write a prompt. Now I'm actually reading back. I can do my own editing because I know what's right and wrong. Then why would I need a writer? And that's kind of where, like, what you're looking from the expert, and that's kind of what people hiring me at the end of the day. They're paying for my expertise and the outcome of that work. So as an expert, I need to make sure that whatever gets produced, whether it's insights or audits or whatever that might be, drives outcomes. And it's just not that easy, and it's gonna be even more difficult with everyone having ChatGPT at their disposal to just create a sentence level prompt, enter, copy paste, and job done. That's kind of where manual penalties might start rolling even more for that level. And I think what's worthwhile as well mentioning, Google, apart from their algorithms, also has quality raters team as well, with very prescriptive guidelines into what good content looks like, how do you make sure that the content addresses the problem and is very relevant to that query. And with the recent leaks as well, it's not guaranteed that they're using that data algorithmically, but it is possible that they've at least considered it at some point, with user signals and quality raters being fed directly into algorithm. Again, go and read, because it's like 14,000 signals from their documentation that leaked out. Again, there's no evidence that they're using any of it. There's no mention that they are ranking factors, but these are just some of the concepts that they've played with at some point. So again, useful for research and evidence to your own work.
40,000 sounds like a very big.
Yeah, but it's still it's massive.
Yeah. So what are some of your favorite AI tools when it comes to streamlining your SEO workflow? I think we've touched on a few of them already, but if you want to just provide,
I think my main drivers really are SEMrush and Streamfrog. These are the two where I don't move anywhere. Now I am experimenting with different tools, and I always, I'm a big fan of demoing tools and really making sure that I'm using the most powerful tools I can. I don't really do a lot of copywriter. I know we've mentioned Surfer AI, and I know recently actually Hemingway, which a lot of our clients have used as a guiding tool for quality and readability. But they released their AI version as well, so I'm quite keen to test it and see how it can create my own kind of writing and improve things. So yeah, again, that I think that will be really quite good, because Hemingway is quite famous for good quality work. So that's probably two on the copy side of things that I'd recommend at least checking out. Again, kind of some of the features might not relate as much to content creation for me, but interesting concepts from there would be like really the natural language processing, making sure that you're hitting all the key concepts within the article. That's just invaluable in my view, because that's kind of where it's like you need to get as close to that algorithm and the entities that Google and customers are searching for, and that's one of the ways. That's definitely a shortcut, because otherwise you have to come up with all the concepts yourself, do the research, and hope for the best. That's probably not the wisest strategy. So that's where, again, some of the pros come out from the tools. But I think you gave me an example of where Surfer created some fun language as well, and yeah, again, like editing process on the back of that is so critical into taking.
Oh yeah. I mean, so I mean, I love Surfer. I think it's a great tool, but it was an article about fire risk assessments for HMOs. So basically targeted at private landlords and managing agents in the UK. And I can't remember the exact wording. You might remember it better than me, but it was basically like a fire risk assessment is a delicate dance of safety and security and all this. And with the landlords, what was it? With the landlords dancing to the melody of its tune or something along those lines. Thought, what on earth is this? Imagine being a landlord or managing agent who's short on time and just needs a quick answer. Why do I need a fire risk assessment for my HMO? Or like, what should a fire risk assessment for an HMO include? And you're reading things like a delicate dance between, you know, so, it was just, I can't remember the exact wording, so my answer's not the most coherent, but it was a bit ridiculous what it's about.
That's kind of where, like, that's a perfect illustration of why you just don't take that content verbatim. You make sure that, you know, there's editing process in place, and whether you do the editing yourself or where we've had bigger teams and you know, as part of the agency, we would create the process of one team would create it, another team would edit that content and make sure that it's to the quality we want, and then SEO would have a look at it as well. Just creates that, but then again, you can think it at the smaller scale. It's the same jobs. The jobs don't change. Maybe the people that do those jobs change in scale. But yeah, that's kind of the bit where if you can get those mini GPTs and brief one on becoming really good copywriter that understands an industry, or maybe a marketeer that understands the industry, a copywriter and the editor, then you have probably a free GPTs that will do a much better job than just trying to prompt it out of the way.
I think on like a really sort of on a really micro level, I mean, AI, we talked about this before the podcast. AI has existed in some shape or form for years and years. I mean, if you look at Grammarly and Hemingway, so you mentioned the Hemingway editor before. Now, I like the Hemingway editor, but I've got to be honest, I wasn't a big fan of the AI iteration of Hemingway because it was rewriting my sentences and making them worse, you know, in my opinion. I'd read them and I'd think, God, if this is what AI is doing, I don't really need to worry too much. Now, Hemingway's a great app. Like I do like the free version. Grammarly, I have a paid subscription for. But I even find with Grammarly, you know, so many writers will say the same thing. It'll correct what you've written, but what it corrects it to is worse in most cases. Or it'll say something like, and I use this example all the time. So, for instance, if you're saying to somebody, you need to do this, so there's a need for a product or service, but you want to emphasize that immediacy and that urgency towards the end of your landing page or article, and it'll say, you know, you need our if you're struggling to rank on page one, you need our bespoke SEO solutions. Whereas Grammarly will change it to, it would help if you invested in our SEO. No one would ever say that. You know, no one would say in a sentence where you're trying to get someone to buy when it's getting towards the bottom of the funnel, it would help if you did this. Please do it. Please kindly invest in it. You fucking need this. You need this. Is a game changer for you. So, so AI has existed. I mean, obviously, I've used Grammarly for what, 7, 8 years now. So you know, that is a form of AI. And I think just being diligent, everything we've said in this episode, it just ties in with that. But, you know, just be diligent, don't take it at face value, and know what's good and what isn't. But, you know, again, not to be harsh on other people, but there are a lot of writers and SEOs out there who don't know the difference between what is really good and what's not.
Yeah, but that's kind of where I think that's why I value my agency level experience so much, and I do not replace it with anything else, because with a lot of those things, you either need somebody senior to show you and to drive that standard of work, or on the other side, you need enough repetitions and you need 10,000 hours in the subject to be good and to get good. So you become professional rather than just doing one thing. And even I recognize as a freelancer now, it's so important that it's so valuable that I get to work with different clients and different agencies and still maintain that diversity of experience, because that's kind of what keeps you at your sharpest edge. And that's kind of why I mean, you have to put the reps in. There's no other way.
I like that. I have to. I'm gonna steal that phrase. Have to put the reps in. I like it. Well, I mean, we have quite a loaded final question for you, and to be honest, I think with everything that you and I have said, we've already answered this question. But to what extent do you agree with the idea that AI won't leave SEOs and content creators behind, but the SEOs and content creators who don't use AI will be left behind?
I think I do agree with that to TLDR, because at the end of the day, you kind of have two approaches, where one approach is that whatever you do is just a job, and that's fine, and I'm not judging it, but at the end of the day, it's just a job. And you can take it to the next level. And we've been chatting about what's the secret ingredient to leveling up and getting that promotion and going for it. And the secret ingredient for me is how you approach your career and personal development. That's always been, as an exec, I was reading the books the business books that then helped me, think differently and approach things differently. And if you, when I was heading up the technical SEO team, I nearly felt obliged to learn coding and to at least. I didn't become a coder and nowhere close to professional developers, but I got my teeth into the game a bit, and I understand. I tinkered under the bonnet of the car I was driving to understand it more. And I think again that curiosity is what takes me further and helps me, and puts me in places where I challenge myself even more. And now I'm in deep waters where there's no certainty. That's kind of where the dream is. But that's kind of where we're in the very same place with AI, because right now its potential is big, and it probably feels like a bit. We live in a bit of an AI bubble, because you do get AI laptops, and it was 2 years ago, or it's already been a thing, and nobody even knew any uses for AI. And even conferences from big players like Google and Microsoft talk about meaningful solutions from them in years time. So that's kind of it's not baked for prime time just yet. But what I'd say is that if you're not interested whatsoever into what's going on, and you just live in your own silo, that's surely not gonna work long time, because it's just kind of the approach that companies taken and then been disrupted. Like Netflix is a great example, where they disrupted the video rental industry. And that's when have you last time rented a videotape? It's
Yeah.
Nobody is even using them. Some people don't even know what they are. So
Right.
yeah, just one of those things where I think, again, if you're skeptical of AI just yet, I'm probably with you there. I'm not like head first replacing all of my processes with AI. I'm probably more of a doubler, but I'm really curious and really kind of, seeing what's the next thing and how I can use it. If it will help me, I will not leave like that arsenal on somebody else's floor to pick it up and just tank all my sites. I just need, like, just being ahead of the game is what SEO is about.
Yeah, I love that phrase, ahead of the game, because I was just about to say something to that effect. I think it's really exciting that, people who are the same age as you and I are kind of at the forefront of the advent of AI, and we can watch it grow and develop. But it's a little bit like Generation X with the internet. I mean, Generation X was there when it happened. I mean, the generation slightly above Generation X, or possibly who was Generation X. I mean, basically, they invented the internet, or if they didn't invent it, they what's the word? They were the first to really properly use it. So they understood it a little better than, say, the millennials like me who came along for the ride. I feel like there's going to be kids in 15, 20 years who are using AI left, right, and center without truly appreciating where it's come from. And I think if you can see it from the get-go and from its conception, as I said, that they're going to be much more au fait in how to use it, and I suppose some of the nuances involved. I see it as an opportunity. I've never seen it as a threat, even when you get the naysayers who are scaremongering left, right, and center, as you said earlier, who say that the world is over and we're going to have no jobs. I've never really believed that for a moment. And I think if we do reach a point where there are no jobs, hopefully you and I are sitting on a nice pension and are retired, having made the most of it for 20 years.
Yeah, it's one of those things, isn't it? Because I believe in cycles, and that everything moves in cycles, and it's not that I believe it, it's just you could see them. And when you look at that early stage of 2000s and .com bubble, you had like pets.com, you had thousands and thousands of sites valuated at like billions and billions of dollars. It all crashed and burned. But then from that time, we've got Amazon, we've got Google, we've got absolute beasts, and then millennials. We've got our Facebook.com, Twitter.com, that's kind of Web 2.0, and all of those revolutions and had a lot of chaos at the beginning. Everyone was trying to figure things out, and at the end of the day, the best ideas that were at the right time won. And now we're going through that cycle again, where we've got AI, and people are creating thousands and thousands of tools, and some of them are quite useful, but not quite ready for taking over. And some of them are just one of millions of ideas that will just they might have their moment, and then they will go away, and something new will create. And just kind of like, I think it's really interesting, and at least worthwhile being curious about it to see what the next thing could be, where there's really commercial use for it, rather than just being a cool idea to develop.
Yeah, I just want to say one final thing on this, and I feel really rude saying this because I was just Googling it as you were talking there, but I think it kind of sums up perfectly what we've been talking about. So there was the phrase, I think it was coined during COVID, wasn't it? The new normal, and we all kind of rolled our eyes at it. But if you think about the new normal, AI representing the new normal. So let's use the S&P 500 index funds as a good example in the stock market. If you go back to June 1973, some of the top S&P 500 stocks, so I think this is the top 10. I'm not going to read all of them out, but you've got companies like Exxon, General Motors, Sears Roebuck, Xerox, General Electric, Texaco. If you go to the S&P 500 today and look at the top stocks, none of them will be in there. So yeah, people always mention that because that shows how quickly the world can change. If you look at Apple and Microsoft in 20 years, are they going to be among the top S&P 500 stocks? I'd be astonished if they were up there. In fact, I think maybe one or two of those companies, Microsoft, might have even fallen off now. So the world is constantly changing. And if you're sitting there thinking, I don't need to embrace AI because it's just not the way we do things around here, well, it is going to be the way we do things in the next 5 or 10 years. So like, I mean, if it's not already. So it's like, you know, you look at that as an example. What we know of as the norm right now will change overnight. And I think if people
you can't, in the past you could easily bet that US economy will win, and if you bet on US businesses, you were in the safe. And I think what's true as well is technology is, you can't stop progress. So one way or another, a V2 or V10 of what we have today will change how we work. Now, will I miss when I'm doing keyword research, and it's quite an in-depth piece, you know, sometimes it can take like 2-3 days of going and really what keyword research is to a certain extent is classification and trying to understand the size of the price. Will I miss my time is stuck in Excel sheets, moving adjectives and nouns around, and is not, you know, and I gladly, and we've tested a lot of different solutions on that side to try to make it as good as what the human output is, and it's not quite good for me yet. But I'm sure a lot of people are already stuck in, and they're classifying and saving hours and just going with that, because, you know, they're not as perfectionist about it as I may be. So yeah, but yeah, you can't, and hopefully there are tasks in your job where you could do, you know, what I've done, that whether like able to easily replace that task with having a cup of tea.
Well, I would sooner generate outlines on Surfer and ChatGPT and inlinks than spend 2 or 3 hours putting together a spreadsheet, like you just said, where I'm aggregating all the page 1 results and finding out what they cover and then what they don't cover. That used to take me 3 or 4 hours just to come up with an outline, whereas now I can do it in an hour or less. So that, if that's not proof that AI doesn't work, I don't know what is. So Sebastian, thank you so much for coming on. Honestly, these are some amazing insights. I think people are going to absolutely love what you have to say. And, you know, if people do want to work with Sebastian, then get in there quickly, because he's getting booked up fast. Where can people find you if they have any questions on what we've discussed and they want to chat more about it?
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn, so you can just search for me. Hopefully, we can place a LinkedIn URL so people can find me more easily. But yeah, that's the best place. Just feel free. I'm open, and we can book it. You know, half-an-hour chat. I'll talk about SEO. Like, yeah, you've probably grasped by now that I'm a massive talker. So yeah, like, absolutely open to conversations about SEO future and all the rest of it.
Honestly, I like massive talkers on this podcast, because I don't feel quite as bad then about being the one that choose the ear off the other person. So no, it's great. Thanks, Sebastian. Really enjoyed that, and I'm sure I'll do as well.
Cheers, Neil.